Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the absolute marvel of human biology. We're going to uncover exactly how your body acts as a relentless, highly efficient waste management facility, otherwise known as the excretory system.
It's a pretty wild question to start with, right? But seriously, every single second of your life, your hardworking cells are just constantly churning out dangerous byproducts. They do this through a chemical process we call metabolism, specifically the breaking down phase known as catabolism. Now, if all that toxic junk was just left to build up in your bloodstream, well, you wouldn't survive very long at all. But luckily for us, our bodies have an absolutely amazing built-in solution to handle the trash.
So to stay alive and maintain what biologists call homeostasis, that perfect, delicate internal biochemical balance, our body relies heavily on this vital process called excretion. Excretion is basically how we flush out these toxic wastes and any extra water before they can do real damage. It's literally your body taking out the microscopic trash.
Here is our roadmap for today. We'll look at the body's waste problem, meet the excretory all-star team, explore the human urinary system, zoom into the anatomy of a nephron, break down the making of urine, and finally, check out the final product.
All right, let's jump right into section 1, the body's waste problem. Okay, so when your cells break down proteins and nucleic acids, they release nitrogen as wastes. The main product of this breakdown is ammonia. And ammonia, it is highly toxic. It spikes the pH of your body fluids and can seriously mess with your biological functions. Now, aquatic animals can just flush ammonia right out into the water around them. But land animals like us, we have a totally different challenge. Our liver steps up and takes that dangerous ammonia, putting it through a neat little process called the ornithine cycle. This cycle actually converts the ammonia into a substance called urea. And the absolute game changer here is that urea is a staggering 1 million times less toxic. Because of this, it can be safely transported right through your bloodstream to be disposed of later.
Moving on to section 2, the excretory all-star team.
When we think of excretion, we usually just think of the kidneys, but it actually involves an incredibly hardworking team. The lungs, the liver, the large intestine, the skin, and yes, the kidneys, all pitch in to keep your internal environment perfectly clean. Let's look at exactly what this team does. The lungs are constantly breathing out carbon dioxide and water vapor from cellular respiration. The liver, as we just saw, handles that toxic ammonia, but it also excretes bilirubin from dead red blood cells. The large intestine takes care of solid waste and excess water. And your skin, it acts as a cooling system, sure, but it also sweats out excess salts, water, and even a tiny bit of urea. But the real heavy lifters of this entire operation, those are absolutely the kidneys. Their specific, massive job is scrubbing the blood totally clean of toxic metabolic waste,
Which brings us to section 3, the human urinary system.
Looking at the big picture, blood enters your 2 kidneys, which are tucked away at the back of your abdominal wall, where it gets purified. The resulting waste product, which we know as urine, then travels down these 2 long tubes called ureters. It gets temporarily stored in a hollow, muscular bag at the bottom, called the urinary bladder. And finally, when the time is right, it exits the whole system through a small tube called the urethra. Let's zoom in a bit for section 4, anatomy of a nephron.
If we zoom past the outer layer of the kidney, called the cortex, and into the inner granular layer called the medulla, we find these really cool pyramid-shaped structures. And tucked inside those lie the real stars of the show. We're talking about millions of tiny, incredibly complex functional units called nephrons. These microscopic tubes are the actual heroes doing the heavy physiological lifting to purify your blood.
Let's figure out exactly how they do it in section 5, the making of urine. Inside every single nephron, this intricate network goes right to work. Blood flows into a cup-shaped structure called the Bowman's capsule, which holds a tight little bundle of capillaries. Right here, a highly porous filtration membrane physically filters water, glucose, amino acids, salts, and urea right out of the blood. What you get from this is a liquid we call filtrate.
Now, this whole purification process happens in 4 really elegant steps. Step 1 is filtration, which is what we just talked about happening in the Bowman's capsule. But wait, that filtrate actually still contains a lot of good stuff the body desperately needs. So step 2 is reabsorption. As the filtrate travels down the nephron's winding tubules, vital nutrients like glucose and tons of water get actively transported right back into the bloodstream. Okay, step 3 is secretion. This is where any remaining excess ions floating around in the blood are specifically targeted and pushed directly into the tubule to join the waste. And finally, step 4 is excretion, where the finished urine leaves the kidney, flows down to the bladder, and eventually exits the body.
Let's look at the end result in Section 6, the final product. So after all that complex, intense chemistry, what actually ends up in the bladder? Well, normal, healthy urine is surprisingly simple. It is actually made up of 95% water. The other 5% is just where all those dissolved nitrogenous wastes, like urea, uric acid, and excess electrolytes, actually live. We've all noticed the color of urine, but did you know that distinct yellow color actually comes from a specific chemical substance called urochrome? It acts as this fantastic built-in hydration indicator for us. Pale yellow means you're doing great on water, while dark yellow is a crystal clear sign of dehydration. And here's a fun fact. It only takes a tiny amount of fluid, just 150 to 200 milliliters filling up the bladder, to cause enough distension to trigger the physical urge to go. Scientists actually call this process micturition. Okay, I absolutely have to share this truly mind-blowing display of biological adaptability with you. When a person's kidneys fail, they might need a transplant, right? Well, if a person receives just one healthy transplanted kidney, that single organ can actually increase its size by a massive 70%. It literally grows so it can handle the entire body's blood purifying workload completely on its very own. Now that is some seriously amazing biological engineering. To wrap up this explainer, let's think about how this all fits together. The digestive system brings all those necessary nutrients and energy into our bodies, but the excretory system, it perfectly mirrors it. It takes the excess materials and the toxic waste from that energy production and kicks it right back out. They are essentially two halves of the exact same coin, working in perfect parallel to keep your blood chemistry perfectly balanced.
Think about how hard your millions of microscopic nephrons are working right this very second just to maintain your baseline existence. It really begs the question, if our bodies have evolved such incredibly complex, automated systems just to survive our own cellular exhaust, what other invisible, microscopic miracles are keeping you alive right now? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.